18 verse 20. It happened about 2,500 years after Adam and Eve were created. But before that time, people married their relatives in the family.
It's so unbelievable. The scripture changes in the Bible. Some of them are so filthy and so egregious and so wicked. Says they're so embedded, if you will, in the matrix, completely brainwashed. A person would be rescued from the strong delusion. You know, some of you, we struggled to see. You know, we just hear these things like, no, that's not right. And much more disgusting changes in the Bible. It's very graphic that's now in the Bible is really evil and very satanic. Like a lot of satanic rituals are going on now in the Bible. And it gets tiring talking about the filth that's now in the Bible. Do you understand? You need the Holy Spirit.
This channel does not promote or encourage any illegal activities. All contents provided by this channel is meant for educational purpose only.
When I hear about another tragic event, it can be disheartening. Sometimes I find myself struggling with negative feelings towards God. I wonder, why doesn't God just eliminate evil? The amount of sin and suffering on earth is overwhelming. Satan's role is to test humans, is for them to choose between good and evil. There are moments when I feel frustrated with God, asking why he doesn't intervene and stop this suffering. Satan's role is to test humans, is for them to choose between good and evil. Our adversary's origin. In biblical accounts, the devil is described as the origin and source of evil, known by various names such as Satan, Lucifer, the prince of demons, and the father of lies. He has been a part of horror story lore for so long. Before his fall from heaven, Lucifer served God as a guardian cherub. According to these prophets, Satan was an angel referred to as the morning star, or Lucifer. Lucifer's pride led to his fall from heaven. At the start of his existence, Lucifer was created good, as all of God's creations are, Genesis chapter 1 verse 31. Fortunately, Satan's prideful attempt to overthrow God's throne ended in failure. As a consequence for his rebellion and disrespect of his angelic position, God expelled Lucifer from heaven along with his rebellious angels, casting them down to earth and ultimately condemning them to hell. Instead, he turned his focus to deceiving and tempting God's children into turning away from him. Thus, the once bright morning star known as Lucifer became humanity's adversary and accuser, known as Satan. Satan's role is to test humans, presenting challenges for them to choose between good and evil.
Here we go, down the rabbit hole.
The spirit of Antichrist prophet is already at work. The spirit of Antichrist prophet is already at work. He's already coming into power.
Jubilees 4 verse 11. It means that the first generation of Adam and Eve was Cain, Abel, Awan, Seth, and Azorah. Seth, as mentioned, married his sister Asherah and gave birth to Enosh and Noam. Every man in the first 10 generations of sons of Seth had only one wife according to the monogamous priestly legality. Meanwhile, Lamech, son of Methuselah of the Cain dynasty, had 2 wives, Adah and Zillah. Only the first 3 generations of the sons of the Seth dynasty, a brother married his sister. According to the Book of Jubilees and according to the commentary, there were marriages between the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve are allowed. Later generations were forbidden from doing so by God. Some of us, when we hear that the first generations of people married their sisters, are surprised and say that it is impossible. Others, however, argue that Adam and Eve's children could not marry each other because there were laws against marriage between relatives. The law forbidding relatives from marrying appeared during Moses' time when God gave the Israelites the Torah. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. Leviticus 18 verse 20. It happened about 2,500 years after Adam and Eve were created. But before that time, people married their relatives in the family. Even Abraham, who lived over 400 years before Moses, also married his father's sister. Abraham replied, I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father though not of my mother, and she became my wife. And she became my wife. Genesis 20 verses 11 to 12. When Isaac, son of Abraham, was born, he sent his servant Eliezer to the house of his motherland to take a wife for his son from among his relatives. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. Genesis 24 verses 3 to 4. Later we understand that Rebekah, Isaac's wife, was the granddaughter of Milcah and Nahor, the brother of Abraham. And also Jacob son of Isaac married Leah and Rachel, who were his cousins, the daughters of Laban, a brother of Rebekah, Jacob's mother. Jacob's mother.
Connect to God. Connect to God. So you can know how these things operate. The scriptures does say that Lilith exists, and this is what it says about her. Now pay real close attention as we break down this verse. In Isaiah chapter 34 verse 13, it says the screech owl. The word screech owl in the Hebrew is the word Lilith. You ready for this? Lilith, by definition in the original Hebrew language, means a female night demon. She actually is a female night demon. Female night demon.
We all know the biblical story about Adam and Eve, the story that tells about the creation of the world and the relationship between God and humanity. But just before Eve was created, there was another woman who appeared in the first chapter of Genesis as an unknown figure. This is Lilith the demon, an ancient Sumerian and Babylonian mythology figure that emerged in Jewish history far before angels and prophets, possibly even before Yahweh. There is no biblical character that has seen such a development in Jewish mythology, from being the first wife of Adam to become the wife of Satan and the mother of demons. At least that's how Lilith was portrayed in the early 2nd millennium AD. Lilith the night goddess is one of the most amazing characters in all of biblical history. Lilith appears as a force that seduces men in most cultures.
Known by legend as Adam's first wife, she was the first Adam's first wife. She was the first woman, before Eve was even created and before the eating of the forbidden fruit in the garden. Lilith is the woman mentioned in Genesis chapter 1, while Eve was the woman mentioned in Genesis chapter 2. Lilith betrayed Adam and became the bride of Satan and the mother of demons. At least this is the way Lilith was portrayed by some in the early 2nd millennium CE. The story of Lilith, however, dates back thousands of years and spans countless civilizations. And these are her true origins. The astute reader of the first 2 chapters of Genesis will notice that Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 seem to contain 2 different accounts of the creation of humankind. The explanation often given for this is that Genesis chapter 2 simply expands on the information given in Genesis chapter 1. Biblical scholarship since the early 1900s has taken a slightly different approach to answering this question. The leading theory today among Old Testament scholars as to why there are 2 different accounts in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 is called the documentary hypothesis, which suggests that Moses did not write the Pentateuch, aka the first 5 books of the Bible. The documentary hypothesis theorizes that the book of Genesis is a composite text made up of many different texts stitched and woven together by several different people over different time periods living in different locations throughout the ancient Near East. And by the end of the 1st millennium CE, there was a perfect opportunity for the legend of Lilith to fill that gap. According to an anonymous Jewish text titled The Alphabet of Ben Sira, dating to the Middle Ages, the reason there is a difference between Genesis 1 and 2 is because there are 2 very different stories. The first created woman in Genesis 1 wasn't Eve, but an evil demon named Lilith. Eve didn't come into the story until Genesis chapter 2. So who was Lilith? What are her origins? And how did she eventually become viewed as being Adam's first demonic wife? However, scholars believe that the mythology of Lilith must have been originally passed down orally because she, or more accurately, they, feature prominently in later written Sumerian texts. The concept of Lilith first appeared in Sumerian myth in the 3rd millennium BCE and were a class of wind and storm demons called the Lilitu. Lilith's name is usually translated as night monster or night creature, but can also be translated as screech owl or little owl. Scholars believe that many aspects of Athena actually come from ancient stories of Lilith. Will be more prominent as we look at our next source for Lilith, which is the book of Isaiah. The only clear reference to Lilith in the entire Bible is found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, verse 14. Desert creatures will meet with hyenas, and wild goats will bleat to each other. There the night creatures will also lie down and find for themselves places of rest. Word leleth as night creature. Leleth as night creatures. The author of Isaiah 34 likely knew of the story of Lilith, at the very least know what mythology he was referring to. The interesting question then becomes, what was the mythology or the cultural understanding of Lilith in Jerusalem in the mid to late 8th century BCE? The next source I'd like to focus on for Lilith can be found in the Song of the Sage, a work discovered as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here, Lilith finds her place, pretty definitively as a demon. Moving right along to our next source for Lilith, and that is the Babylonian Talmud. The Talmud is the central text of Rabbinic Judaism, along with the writings of the Hebrew Bible. This seems a little strange, but notice Lilith here is clearly defined as a female demon. When God created Adam, he was alone. Then God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." Then he also created a woman from the earth, as he had created Adam, and called her Lilith. Adam and Lilith immediately began to fight about sex, but they would not listen to one another and flew away into the air. "The woman you gave me has run away." And so here we get the story of Lilith being Adam's first wife. Lilith wasn't created from Adam's rib like Eve was. She was created from the same dirt of the ground that Adam was. Lilith is the Genesis 1 woman. Eve is the Genesis 2 woman. But unfortunately, Lilith and Adam couldn't agree on the proper sex position, so Lilith took off. You could say there was trouble in paradise. Oh, terrible joke. Lilith is then seen as the woman or demon who was destined to cause death and sickness to infants, which is how Lilith is seen more and more.
Let Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
She saw this man on the street that had pet rats that he saved, and he trained them better than most dogs. As they follow his every command, even teaching them when to stay and then when to come to him, and it's unreal. They can even jump to do flip tricks on his hand, having everyone in the city shocked at what they're seeing.
Much has been said about Adam and Eve and their three sons, Cain, Abel, and Seth, but to populate the world, female power is needed, and here the daughters of Adam and Eve appear in the story. Although they are not mentioned in the Bible, there must be a reason for how the world multiplied. The Book of Jubilees is the only one who wrote their name and the complete dynasty, fascinatingly, and thus completed what does not appear in the Bible, filling the gap and explaining who they are and how the world multiplied. This video explores the overlooked daughters of Adam and Eve, shedding light on their names, roles, and contributions to the rich tapestry of human history. Let's begin. As we know, nowhere in the Bible is not written that God created other peoples besides Adam and Eve. This means that all the people who have ever lived on earth are descendants of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve bore Cain and Abel as their first children. Genesis 4 verses 1 to 2. Cain from the word I bought means I did, but in the language of the Bible Eve said when she gave birth to Cain, I have brought forth a man. Thing, or because the boy simply does not receive attention. Then after Cain's murder of Abel, another boy appears and his name is Seth. Adam made love to his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, saying, God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. Genesis 4 verse 25. Along with Seth, they were part of the first generation of humans. The name Seth implies compensation, as it is used to replace Abel. Seth's genealogy is crucial, leading to Noah and playing an important role in the story of the flood. Even though the names of only 3 sons are mentioned in the Bible, Adam and Eve had other children. The text mentions that after Seth was born, Adam was 800 years old, during which time he gave birth to sons and daughters, and lived for 930 years, according to Genesis 5. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Genesis 5 verse 4. Adam and Eve were commanded by God to multiply throughout their lives. Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Genesis 1 verse 28. The Bible does not give the exact number of children of Adam and Eve, but it says that Adam and Eve had many sons and daughters. If there were no other people besides Adam and Eve, then it turns out that the first men had to marry their sisters, because there were simply no other women. We do not know when Cain married, no details of other marriages or children are given, but it can be assumed that Cain's wife was his sister, niece, or other relative. To complete the puzzle and understand who the daughters of Adam and Eve are, we need the help of the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees, which belongs to the Jewish library, is an ancient book corresponding to the 5 chapters of the Book of Genesis and the first 20 chapters of the Book of Exodus, which was written in the priestly circles of the house of Zadok, the keepers of the ancient genealogical dynasties from creation onwards. The 2nd century BC opens our eyes to interesting and unexpected angles regarding the historical truth from the priestly point of view, about the evolution of the first human family, and adds to the vigorous brevity in chapter 5 of the book of Genesis, very interesting details. Beginning with Seth, son of Adam and Eve, the women and mothers of the first 9 generations are fascinating. Genesis 4 verse 1. In Genesis, we see that Cain married only one wife, suggesting that there was only one sister. In his role as the firstborn, Cain took all the fields for himself, as a man of the land. This left Abel to look after the animal, and so he became a shepherd. It is understandable that there was only one woman to be Cain's or Abel's wife. And then it was said, "And Cain took one his sister to be his wife, and she bare him Enoch at the close of the 4th Jubilee." Jubilees 4 verse 9. It can be the reason for killing Abel. As a result of God choosing Abel's offering, tensions between the brothers increased over who would take their sister, Awan. It seems that Cain thought to eliminate his brother from the competition to carry on, so God emphasizes, as an allusion to sexual desire. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Genesis 4 verse 7. Cain murdered Abel, and was free to marry Awan. Cain was informed by God that he would not enjoy the field work and would be moved. Cain accepted his fate and avoided the field work. As a result, it is likely that Cain took Abel's flock and set up a tent for himself on Nod's land. Cain is also the father of urban settlement and material and tangible culture. As the years passed, Adam and Eve had their 3rd son, Seth, the 2nd generation of humans, from whom begins the human story that leads us from Adam to Abraham through 21 generations. According to the Book of Jubilees, Adam and Eve had 9 more sons. As for Seth's wife, the Book of Jubilees provides a surprising answer: his wife is his sister, Asherah. And in the 5th week of the 5th Jubilee Seth took Asherah his sister to be his wife. Jubilees 4 verse 11. It means that the first generation of Adam and Eve was Cain, Abel, Awan, Seth, and Azorah. Seth, as mentioned, married his sister Asherah and gave birth to Enosh and Noam. Meanwhile, Lamech, son of Methuselah of the Cain dynasty, had 2 wives, Adah and Zillah. Only the first 3 generations of the sons of the Seth dynasty, a brother married his sister. According to the Book of Jubilees and according to the commentary, there were marriages between the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve are allowed. Some of us, when we hear that the first generations of people married their sisters, are surprised and say that it is impossible. Others, however, argue that Adam and Eve's children could not marry each other when God gave the Israelites the Torah. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. Leviticus 8. Even Abraham, who lived over 400 years before Moses, also married his father's sister. Abraham replied, I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father though not of my mother, and she became my wife. Genesis 2. He sent his servant Eliezer to the house of his motherland to take a wife for his son from among his relatives. Genesis 24 verses 3-4. Later we understand that Rebekah, Isaac's wife, was the granddaughter of Milcah and Nahor, the brother of Abraham. And also Jacob son of Isaac married Leah and Rachel, who were his cousins,
that God is actually the devil, that it was Jesus that tempted Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and that this world is actually hell are just a few of the beliefs held by a hidden version of Christianity that was banned from the Bible and by the church.
Eve committed adultery with the serpent. Time to blow your mind. Check it out. Eve committed adultery with the serpent. Time to blow your mind. Check it out. After God caught them for eating the fruit, this is what Eve said. And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. So Eve committed spiritual adultery with Satan.
This has been a Illuminati production. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos. If you like to support the channel, links are in the description.